Hello, and welcome to Narrative Inc. Today we are going to be going over the Esquire article titled Welcome to Brandon Sanderson's Fantasy Empire that was written by Adam Morgan. This was published 2 days ago. And it's really interesting because we just got last week an article, possibly called a hit piece, based on Brandon Sanderson from Wired. I didn't want to go over that one though because there were just so many people who went over it and said everything that could be said about it. And so today I'm actually going to be going over this one because I think it's very interesting, and I'll be honest, I think it is an unbiased piece that goes over the good, the bad, and everything in between about Brandon Sanderson, his business, his faith, and his beliefs and how he runs things. The beginning of the article says, the genre's most popular writer is determined to upend how books get made. We visit his mind-blowing headquarters in suburban Utah, where he and dozens of his employees are working to restore power to the reader. I think this is a really good start to the article. I'm not going to be going over the whole article. You can do that yourself. I would definitely say go read it. Because I do think it is a good article, I think you should read it and get your own opinion of it. But I'm just going to go over my initial thoughts, but I will mention specific sections of the article that I think are really good to go over. So my initial thoughts are, he's actually going over Sanderson's career and what he writes. It seems like he's trying to give Sanderson's history and actual factual knowledge about where he came from, how he got started, and what he actually does in his publishing. So there's an actual narrative to the story, at least for the first half of it. And it starts by him going into the supervillain lair, and then he goes on from there and kind of goes through Sanderson's little world of his publishing. So he's giving Sanderson credit for using his platform to change the way books can be published. Not as much praise as he is stating facts about the situation. He states and quotes Sanderson for wanting to change how New York publishers won't change the way that they do things. And the author, Adam, the author's name is Adam. The author, Adam, mentions that the beauty of Utah, and he's making it seem like a beautiful place to go to. I'm going to try and not compare this to the Wired article too much, but compared to the Wired article, which made Utah seem like this podunk place that why would you ever want to go there, he actually mentions how beautiful Utah is. And I live near Utah. I have family in Utah, and I've been to Utah a lot. And I agree, Utah is a very beautiful place. Whether you are Mormon or not, it is a great place to go and do outdoor activities. And this author also explains a lot of the ideas and concepts between from Sanderson's series. He name drops things and gives explanations to those characters. Not as of like, haha, look, I know what I'm talking about, but to explain to the reader some concepts that will help them better understand this author. He's also showing how Dragonsteel does their business, how they want to help people and actually treat their employees well. And the author speculates that Sanderson will stop working with traditional publishers because of the success that he has through his own publishing. This is just a speculation. This isn't a statement of saying, oh, I bet in the next 5 to 10 years, Sanderson will become just his own publishing entity, because he does mention, and Sanderson does mention, that he really does like his publishers. But I do think that one day eventually Sanderson will break off from them when he's not beholden to any contracts with like his Stormlight Archive series or his younger series or whatever publishers he's working with, because he works with a lot of publishers, because he does kids books, young adult books, and adult fantasy books, as well as a lot of different projects that Sanderson does. One thing that I do like about this article is that he mentions some backlash that Sanderson received from the Kickstarter. And the article says, but not everyone was thrilled by the runaway success of Sanderson's record-breaking Kickstarter in 2022. Today is a really good day to support your favorite author who hasn't made $18 million in the last few days. Tweeted by Natania Barron, a fantasy novelist based in North Carolina. Am I personally upset at Brandon Sanderson for making money? Not at all. Truly good for him. If you love fantasy and want to support the genre, I highly recommend reading more and more broadly. She continued, sharing a starter pack of diverse writers in the genre, including N.K. Jemisin, Nnedi Okorafor, and C.L. Polk. Barron's tweet got more than 1,000 likes. And I will link that tweet in the description below because I think it is great for us to widen our knowledge of the genre. So Sanderson does have regrets. He wishes that independent bookstores were included in this. From the article, Sanderson is also the first to admit his biggest regret about the Kickstarter in that independent bookstores were left out. While the traditionally published versions of his secret books will be distributed by Macmillan in brick and mortar stores, hundreds of thousands of backers will already have their Dragonsteel editions by the time Macmillan's editions hit shelves. And even amongst those backers, there have been some dissatisfaction as fulfillment has been slow and uneven. Had the books been traditionally published, a percentage of those backers would have bought copies from bookstores instead. I think that it's really good that Adam, the author, brings up this point. I think showing the good and the bad of Sanderson and how things are run is really great to show off. Of course, Brandon Sanderson can't fix everything. He can't be this all-amazing person that does the best at everything. He's going to make mistakes, and I think that's really important to show. I'm a huge Sanderson fan. I have been reading his books for the past 5 years, and a lot of his stories have influenced my life. But I do see the issues and the things that he does wrong. And I think it's really good to point those things out in a non-biased way. So I think that this article shows the good and bad from all angles. Yeah, and whenever Sanderson talked about the criticism, he would point to himself from the article. And so, yeah, I really do think this article does a good job of showing Sanderson's character, about how he realizes he is to blame for things. And so the next little bit, we'll actually be going over some Mormon beliefs and different things that this article touches on, which I think is actually really fantastic. So this article touches on Sanderson's history of how he feels about same-sex attraction and how he had a stance that was in line with the Mormon Church. So this is from the article. So the church's general stance on LGBTQ people is not where I, as a liberal member of the church, would like to be. If you look through my own history with the LGBTQ people, I needed some education, as many did. I still do, honestly. My belief is that by being a more liberal member of the church and remaining with the church and remaining at BYU, this is a way of getting to where we want to be. And in another Reddit response earlier this year, he elaborated, I always get a lump in my stomach when I see someone has dredged up that essay, but at the same time, I'm glad I wrote it, since without it, I don't think I had the opportunities to learn where I have. The essay is Sanderson talking about how he completely agrees with the Mormon Church's stance on those with same-sex attraction. And so it's good that he sees his mistakes and where he can improve. Of course, that doesn't completely forgive those mistakes, but he does see that he needs to improve. So this article also goes over tithing, which is a touchy subject around the church and those who associate with it. This is from the article. Later, I asked Wilson of Dragonsteel if Dragonsteel tithes or donates revenue from the Kickstarter or other online sales to the church. If the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, tithing and other charitable offerings are considered personal religious commitments, he says. Dragonsteel as a business does not donate any of its revenue to the church, although individual Dragonsteel employees who are members of the church may choose to contribute their personal earnings at their discretion. Of course, tithing isn't a Mormon phenomenon. It's extremely common among many religious faiths around the world, including people who identify as Protestant, Evangelical, Catholic, Muslim, and Jewish. But according to a 2012 Pew survey, 79% of American Mormons tithe 10% of their earnings, as a much higher percentage of members than you'd find in similar surveys of other religious groups. Tithing is a principle of my church and that I believe in, Sanderson tells me. So, in giving those who need and to causes I believe in, however, Jesus Christ taught us not to speak loudly about our charitable giving. Indeed, he made it very clear that we are to do the opposite. I generally try to follow this by saying that, yes, I do give to my church of my personal funds. I also give to many other causes. The actual numbers and amounts are generally private. This article does go on to mention the other recent... before I get into that part, I like how the author goes into tithing, how it mentions how, yes, this is a big thing in the Mormon church, but it also is something that other religious faiths do very commonly. I think a lot of people forget about that. Of course, tithing in the Mormon church is a very big thing because it is 10% of their earnings. But I like what Sanderson said about how Jesus Christ taught us not to speak loudly of our charitable givings, which I think is good. And I love that the author put these things into the article. I'm like I mentioned before, I'm not going to be going over too much of the Brandon Sanderson Is Your God article, but I do want to mention some sections from this article that go over it, because I think getting further word from Sanderson and other writers and journalists about this is really important to the whole narrative, because as we'll see later, once the story is out, it belongs to the people. And I do think that learning how authors can separate themselves from their work is important, because there's a large discussion in the community right now and for a while about, do we support authors if we don't believe or don't like them? Do we support good stories and books even though the author has made mistakes? I think it's a really hot topic, definitely something to cover later, but the article does mention that the other recent article, Brandon Sanderson Is Your God, some things from that. So yes, so it speaks about this. So the way that this goes over it is it shows more of Sanderson's character. I think a lot of people saw how Brandon Sanderson dealt with the article and the way that he spoke. I think there's even more parts in here that we can take from it. So so over the phone a few days later, Sanderson tells me, this is from Adam, the Esquire author, tells me he felt a lot of different emotions when he sat down to read the story. I felt betrayed. That was the strongest feeling I had after spending so much time talking to him about things he seemed so interested in, Sanderson says. But I respect Keehee as a colleague. He's a writer, so he has to write what's true for him, just like you do, and just like I do. Sanderson tells me he hasn't heard from Keehee or anyone else at Wired since the profile ran. But I hope to talk to Keehee again at some point, he says. Anytime I get criticism from anyone, my job is to listen. Before we hung up, he compares this experience to something in the Cosmere. One of the main themes of Mistborn, one of his series, is that it's worth trusting people even though they can hurt you, he says. It's better to trust and be betrayed in real life too. Over email, I asked Keehee a few questions as well. Why did he read so many of Sanderson's books if he didn't like the writing? Was he surprised by the response of his story? Did his responses change his perspective on anything? Keehee writes back, as I've said to others, the piece belongs to readers now. They get the last word. So, I think that's basically the end of it. I don't think we should keep dredging up this Wired article or keep giving it attention, because it did its job. It gave attention to Brandon. It gave attention to the Wired people, because it got way more traction than pretty much any other Wired article ever, as far as I can tell. Instead of tens of thousands of views and reads, it got millions. And I think the fact that Sanderson is willing to accept that criticism and be honest about his feelings and still want to talk to the author is important. And I am glad that this article brought it up, because I think it is a very important piece in this whole puzzle, this whole story of Sanderson getting more publicity. So moving on, further into the article, he goes over the Cosmere House, where editors work on projects. Dan Wells is there working on a Cosmere role-playing game, which I'm really excited for. I think it'll be very interesting. The author asks questions that I think we have all wanted to ask. I ask this from the article. I ask a question I've been thinking about ever since I arrived. Where do you find the energy to do all of this? Writing 2 books a year, teaching, podcasting, and running a business, not to mention parenting 3 kids. I only got 2 kids, and I'll be lucky if I file this story on time. Sanderson laughs. The part of my job I spend the most time doing is the energizing part. I legitimately love writing books. It energizes my mind in a way that no other activity does. And because of that, energy is not a problem. Some of his energy, which you can almost see radiating off his shoulders if you spend more than 5 minutes with him, might be explained by his working schedule. Sanderson sleeps from 1 in the afternoon until 1 in the afternoon most weekdays, writes from 2 to 6 in the evening, takes a long break to spend time with his family, then writes from another block between 10 p.m. and 2 in the morning. After that, he's free to spend 2 hours doing whatever he likes before going to bed. I think it's great. Apparently, I've never met Sanderson in real life, but apparently he has a lot of energy, which is really cool. And I think one thing that, and I do know that one thing Sanderson has mentioned in his lectures is that one of the reasons why he became a writer is so that he can have his own schedule. You don't go into writing so that you can wake up at 7 a.m. and go to work at 8. You go into writing because you want to have a free schedule. Yeah, I think that's really cool that he mentions that. So the author Adam speaks about how they run their business as well. I feel like it feels like an indie game studio, and the article also mentions how they're looking to expand, but want to do it in a good way and not overspend and ruin the company. So this is also from the article. Back when they first founded the company, Emily became Sanderson's business manager, helping with fan mail and doing all the paperwork. But as her responsibilities grew, she hired more and more people to help. Now she acts as a COO for this one-of-a-kind business. Part independent press, part merchandise manufacturer, part streaming content producer, part editorial and artistic support for the Cosmere. Brandon's the big vision person and I'm the detail person. I probably wouldn't dare do some of this on my own, she says. And I'm a little overambitious, Sanderson says. I like that he brings up the dynamic of Emily and Brandon, because a lot of people, when they get married to work off the strengths of these people. And I think it's cool that they run their business this way, where Brandon can basically put out all the ideas, do the base work, but then all these people can come together and actually take what he's done and turn it into something better. And I like that Sanderson is very open about how much work his family and his wife does and the business does. So we're coming to the end of the article now, and he does bring up and ask if Sanderson's faith impacts his writing. Sanderson mentions that it does, but probably subconsciously. He mentioned that I don't write books to teach lessons. I write books to be uplifting in people's lives, which I think is great. I love that, Sanderson, he's not trying to convert people to his religion with his writing. He is just trying to write good stories and uplift people. So this article ends with the author mentioning that Sanderson just wants to make his business a good place to work, and the author feels that the employees were genuine when they said that it was a great place to work. So overall, I think that this article touches all the points that should be touched when you're going into somebody's life and meeting them and meeting their business and their family and their friends. And I do think it's unbiased. It goes over touchy subjects, it goes over the good, the bad, and just a lot of things that I believe should be going over in an unbiased journalist preview of a character. And so I think it is good. The author also shows the success and good things that Sanderson does. It's a good article, and I think you should look into it. It'll be linked in the description below. If you want to know who Sanderson is, reading this honest and unbiased article, I think, is a good place to start. Definitely form your own opinion. This is my opinion, not only as a fan, but somebody who wants to know the truth about things. And I didn't feel, reading through the article, that there were any biased, I just believe Sanderson is a good person. But I do believe that the article does a great job of touching on all aspects of who he is. I think it was honest, I think it was true, and I think it is a great article. So again, go read it, form your own opinion, and let me know in the comments. Did you read the article? Did you like it? What are your thoughts on Sanderson after all these articles and all this publicity that he is getting? So thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.